The heats for this year's World's Strongest Man are done, but we are nerds here at Big Loz Official and we know some of you guys are interested in these facts too. So we're going to take a look at what would have happened if everyone competed in one group. So this is just for fun, and I know how much you enjoy doing this, probably more than anyone. I do find it interesting, and it does, there's a few points we should go through. Obviously, some athletes have the ability to take things a bit easier at certain points, and obviously, when you're in a group, you're really focused on who's in your group.
Yeah.
But when you put all the scores together as if they were competing, you do see some interesting facts.
So the first event in the group then was the Webster Stones. Now this is very similar to the nickel stones, but it is a brand new piece of equipment. So we can't really compare anything that the athletes did here to the nickel stone records. But the furthest distance was by Eddie Williams, and he managed 46.45 meters. Now there were 3 athletes who chose to stop at 40 meters, it looked like. So that was Mitch Hooper, Andre Foytu and Evan Singleton. 3 people from group 1 made the top 10 on this if you put everyone together. And they were Eddie, Luke and Kevin Ferris.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting fact. When you look at the individual groups and see how they did against everyone and see what groups were almost specialists in certain events.
And you're going to see that theme throughout this video for different events, different groups. So on the flip side, just one person from group 5 made the top 10 here, and that was Jaco Schoenwinkel, who was in 10th place. For the other groups, 2, 3 and 4, they all had 2 in the top 10.
So you can see here we've got the full list of results up here. In this event, most guys were going 100%. As we said, there was a couple of guys that did 40 and it looked like they could have done a little bit more. Hard to know how much more, but it is interesting when you look through the groups and see where people stacked up. And as Liz said, 3 athletes from group 1 all finishing in the top 10. So event 2 was the Deadlift Ladder, with weights ranging from 300 to 380 kilos, 5 bars in total. And if you could be the fastest through all 5 bars, that was the goal. Be the quickest and you win.
Yeah, so Adam Bishop was the fastest out of all 30 athletes here. He did it in 27.17 seconds. We expected Adam to be fast. We saw him put in a really fast time in Britain's 2 years ago. He was 1 second quicker with these same weights, but similar setup. So Adam Bishop was in group 3, as was Matt Ragg, who came second in this event with 30.72 seconds. And this was Matt's first ever time doing a deadlift ladder.
Well, we've seen some amazing deadlifts from Matt over the last year. 460 kilos he did not that long ago. But yeah, group 3 proving to be amazing deadlifters, with Adam and Matt coming out first and second across all 30 lifters.
So only 11 of the 30 athletes were able to complete all 5 lifts. And the fastest with 4 was Kane Francis, doing it in 26.98 seconds.
It's quite interesting when you think only 11 finished, because I see so many comments from people saying, oh, it's too light. But only 11 finished.
Yeah.
So it shows it's still a challenge. 380 kilos as a one-off lift, not so bad for these guys. But doing it at the end of a ladder, trying to get through as quick as possible, much more challenging. And having to reset onto each individual bar is very, very hard. How many times you've been in the gym, you do a deadlift, your first rep is the hardest. And then you go down, you're in position, you come back up, it's an easier second rep. But when you have to do that first rep all the time, actually very, very hard.
So we already said about Adam and Matt, but actually 3 people were in the top 10 from group 3, because Thomas Evans was in there as well. So just like we saw with the Webster Stones in group 1, this was the deadlift group. And then to flip it round again, just one person from group 1 made the top 10 in the deadlift ladder, and that was Tristan Hoth, and he was 8th place overall.
This really shows that body shape can suit certain events, because you've just gone from the best group when it came to the Webster Stones to the worst group when it came to the deadlift. So I think you can see here no real surprises on this one. The big deadlifters coming out on top, and some of the big names in there. Mitch Hooper, Rauno, obviously a huge deadlifter, Evan Singleton, Tom Stoltman in there as well. Some big, big names. That's going to be interesting when we come to the actual deadlift in the final.
So on to the Sandbag steeplechase then, and this overall was won by Tom Stoltman, who managed to do it in 53.69 seconds. And Mitch Hooper was 0.15 of a second behind him in second place. But both of them were nearly 4 seconds faster than the man in third place, who was Pavlo Kordiaka.
Yeah, and those three are all exceptional at loading. This event was brutal. Loads of the athletes struggling on this one. Long distance with 3 bags. Essentially, it's like 6 bags because you load it over the steeple in the middle, pick it up again, load it onto the end. But if your fastest time is around the 1 minute mark and there's only 75 seconds to finish the whole task, it shows how challenging this event was.
Yeah, so like you just said, guys struggled to finish and only 11 were able to load all 3 bags to the final platform. And 11 was also the number for the deadlift, the amount of guys who finished the deadlift ladder.
So obviously we know the athletes that excelled, but which was the best group when it came down to the loading?
It was actually Group 1 again. So it was Tristan, Luke and Trey. The 3 athletes from that group were in the top 10 on this event too. So not only were they so good at the Webster Stones, but here on the Sandbag steeplechase too. So that was really a tough group. And then there was just one athlete from Group 3 who made the top 10. That was Matt Ragg, who came 4th overall. Every other group had 2.
Event number 4 was the Viking Press. This looked visually really, really cool with a huge globe that the athletes were lifting. What information have you got for this one?
Well, this one was won outright by Thomas Evans, who managed 17 reps. And interestingly, he's done 2 World's Strongest Man heats now, Tom. And he's won the overhead in both when you put everyone together. So last year it was a log ladder and he was fastest out of all 30 athletes.
He is a fantastic presser. The events weren't the best for Thomas in this year's Worlds, but when he has the right events, he's such a good athlete.
And for the first time, the groups were balanced perfectly. So you had 2 men from each group making up the total top 10 in this event.
I've got to say, World's Strongest Man did a good job kind of with the groups this year. They did seem fairly well balanced. I mean, we're having fun and we're going to pick apart some things here, but I think the groups were very, very challenging and worked out really well.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets a little bit harder to be genuinely comparing some of these groups when it comes to the car walk, because there were athletes that at this point could take things a little bit easier, take the foot off the gas, if you like, when it comes to the car walk.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, Evan Singleton sat it out completely. Would have been his favourite event in the heats, probably, but he didn't have to do it, so he didn't. And then there was Mitch Hooper, Andre Foytu, and Tom Stoltman, who did the minimum amount that they needed to retain their position in the group.
So the fastest athlete when it came to the car walk was Rob Kearney, and it was really good to see Rob finish strong. This is his swan song, his last competition. The whole competition didn't go the best for Rob, but it was great to see him on his favourite event finish on top in a time of 12.07 seconds.
And only 18 of our 30 athletes were able to complete the full 20-metre course.
Which is interesting because while we were doing our live, we saw a few comments beforehand saying, oh, £1,000 car, that's easy.
I know. I mean, people must be getting strong if they think £1,000 is light. But it goes to show also, the groups where it was incredibly close throughout, like Group 1, no one could afford to take their foot off the gas there. So you continually see those top performances because they couldn't take it easy at any point.
Yeah, it's interesting when we put the overall scores together now, which you should be able to see on the screen now. And obviously you kind of go through there. The yellow highlighted athletes are the athletes that made the final. Yeah. Now, the first thing that stands out there to me is Eddie Williams. Joint 4th he would have been overall, but lost out on the stone off.
Yeah.
And Luke and Eddie were actually tied on points in their group.
Yeah.
However, when you go on a contest with everyone competing, Eddie would have been tied in 4th with Evan Singleton. Now, we must point out Evan Singleton probably would have been looking at 29 or 30 points on the car walk. It's a superb event for him. So he would have gone to the top. But we could argue as well, Mitch Hooper could have got 30 to 29 points on the car walk.
Yeah, I mean, there were athletes. So Mitch, Tom, Andre and Evan, they were all able to make choices at some point and not have to go full pelt. So obviously these points aren't what would have actually happened if they were all up against each other. They wouldn't have had that luxury. But yeah, Andre Foytu also top 10 in terms of points, and Jaco Schoonwinkel was joint 10th with Luke Stoltman on points, but he lost out on the stone off. And talking of the stone off, 2 men with the second place advantage lost out in the finals this year.
Yeah, we didn't see that last year. Last year, every athlete with that second place advantage went through. This year, we had a bit of a mix.
So speaking of Andre Foytu, he very nearly made his first World's Strongest Man final at 22 years old. Now, the last time we saw a 22-year-old in the World's Strongest Man final was in 2011, and that was Thor Bjornsson. And the youngest ever man to make a final at Worlds was Anton Boucher, who was 21 years old when he made the final in 1994, and he qualified out of his group with Magnus Ver Magnusson. And as you were saying also, like 3 athletes out of Group 1 made up the overall top 10, and that was Tristan Hoth in 2nd place, Eddie Williams in joint 4th, and Luke Stoltman in joint 10th. Tristan has been so impressive.
Group 1 for the whole part of the competition. I mean, the deadlift, as we said, was the only event that maybe that group struggled more in. What a group it was. And let's remember, Trey Mitchell was in that group as well, and, you know, clearly not back to his best. So on paper, a very, very tough group.
So there was 3 from Group 1. Only 1 from Group 4 would have made that top 10. That was Evan Singleton, who was in joint 4th. There was 2 from Group 2. That was Mitch Hooper in 1st place and Andre Foitu in 7th. There was 2 from Group 3. Matt Ragg in 3rd, Ivor Schmuxless in 9th. This is all really hard to remember. And then finally 2 from Group 5. Tom Stoltman in 6th and Wesley Dewinski in 9th. But like we said, it very much is for fun, because if you put these guys all together in one competition, it's a very different story, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's no opportunity to take your foot off the gas. And obviously, as we always say, events are important. And something to point out here, the lowest qualified athlete for the final, if everyone was competing against everyone, was Pavlo Kordiaka. I said from the start, these events in the heats are not the best for Pavlo. However, I think the events in the final are much, much better. We have our 10 finalists.
Yeah.
We wish every single one of them the best of luck. It's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, you know, some of the huge names you'd expect to see in this final, but guys like Tristan Hoth, that man has done amazing in this competition.
Yeah.
So we have 10 awesome athletes in the final. We do wish them all the best of luck. Let us know your thoughts. Do you enjoy these kind of little videos where we put everyone together? But it is fun, especially on some of the early events, to kind of compare all the way through.
So we have already done our predictions video. You can watch that by clicking here. Hopefully it shows. And we will be back with our live streams tomorrow. So if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our World's Strongest Man 2024 coverage. And we will catch you guys very soon.